Welcome everybody, this is Christian. I'm going to be playing a game of Star Wars Rebellion with Travis, and he hasn't played before. So I'm going to try my best to explain the rules to him, and hopefully we can get this as quickly as possible so we can summarize it and post this separately. So, this is the universe, or the galaxy, of Star Wars. Coruscant in the middle. You always have Coruscant. We draw a certain number of cards. We each get 3 planets that become loyal to us out of a set of possible, 5 or so. And then you get another 2 planets that are subjugated. For me, Nick, can you hand me a rebel token? For me, would say Kashyyyk is loyal to me. They're loyal. It's either neutral, loyal to me, or it's loyal to you. And something in between that only the Imperials can do is they can subjugate a system. They can just land, and as long as they have ground troops, it immediately becomes subjugated, and then you can build the leftmost icon that's on the planet. If it's loyal to you, either loyal to the rebels or loyal to the Empire, you get the full build queue. And if you leave the planet with no units, it's still yours. If it's subjugated and you leave, like if you take over Kashyyyk, so if you land troops on Kashyyyk and it's loyal to me, it doesn't take away my loyalty, it becomes subjugated, and then the moment I either kill all your forces or you leave, it goes back to whatever it was before. However, let's say you have this planet subjugated and you did something that increased the loyalty by 1. It would take away underlying loyalty to me, and you would still be subjugated, and then you would do it again and it would become loyal to you. So like it's essentially like -1 loyalty, neutral, or +1 depending on what your perspective is. The Empire starts out with way more units, including a Death Star. It's not fully operational yet, but you do start with a Death Star. In 12 Stormtroopers, 12 TIE Fighters, AT-AT, 3 Star Destroyers, I start out with 1 Corvette, 1 Transport, and 2 X-Wings and 2 Y-Wings, and a handful of Troopers. And the game ends the moment you destroy the Rebel base, which is here, and I will draw one of these cards, and it will be placed over here. And it could be any planet of my choosing. Like I could put it on Alderaan, which would be quite dumb since it's adjacent to Coruscant, which you always start out at. So all you would need to do is land a single trooper onto the ground, or have the planet become loyal to you, and then they narc me out. If it's neutral, and then you make it loyal to me, they'll be like, oh yeah, there's actually a rebel base here hidden, and then it will immediately, the units that were in the rebel base will go here, and then they will sit there and wait until you arrive with the fleet and kill them, unless I play one of my cards that allow me to evacuate and move the rebel base to another planet. But I can only draw a certain number of cards in order to relocate the base. So the more of these probes that you take away, it reduces the number of places that I have the potential of going. Plus, if you have any unit in orbit or on the ground, I can't move the rebel base to that planet. And if you already have that card, I obviously can't do it either. So it's a wild goose chase, because it's going to start out on one of these planets. Spoiler alert, I'm going to choose one that's far away from the bulk of your fleet, but there's still plenty of planets to choose from. The advantage of putting it on a named or populated world is that even if the rebel base gets discovered, I can still build stuff on it. However, if I put it on Dantooine and you find out where the base is, then it's just a know-nothing planet. But you can't make a know-nothing planet loyal to you. You could be like, I'm going to send the Emperor to Mon Calamari on a diplomatic mission to make them loyal to the Empire. And I'll be like, oh, you don't want to do that, please don't do that. And then if the base was there, then you would discover it. Missions are done by choosing either one of the 4 starting ones that you have or 2 that you draw each time. What happens is I lay out my missions, and then it's like, let's say Leia and Dodama are going on a mission. These 2 are being held in reserve. You'd be like, I'm going to put the Emperor on this mission and Tarkin on this one, and these 2 are going to be in reserve. So the rebels always go first. I say, I'm going to do this mission here, and you're like, the Emperor's going to try to stop you. And then you do a mission, and then I could decide whether or not I'm going to try to stop you. All missions are either diplomatic, which is the orange code. There's spec ops, which is essentially military, which is the red, and then like it's essentially spying is the blue. And then there's another symbol, and this just means like a bureaucratic, like it's just a resolve. There's no attempt. So let's say the Emperor is trying to block whatever Leia is trying to do. Let's say it's a diplomatic mission. She has diplomatic power 2, the Emperor has 3, and whoever's trying to block it wins ties. So the rebels would roll 2, the Empire would roll 3, this is 2, the Empire gets, this actually counts as 2 in this case, so it'll be 4, so it would be blocked. So they're both there. Now something that's a little bit strategic about it is, let's say there was a Star Destroyer here, and you knew my rebel base was on Danra. If I do a mission here and you use the Emperor to block it, then you can't then send another person here to move that fleet, because this system was used by the Emperor in order to prevent whatever Leia was trying to do. So a good rebel would always be choosing to do like sabotage or to do other missions that the Empire doesn't want to happen, but it slows down their war machine. It stops their progress. Something that's very important to counteract that is to have multiple fleets. Rather than having 2 Star Destroyers in one system, if you have 1 Star Destroyer in each system, it allows you, like, alright, you stopped me there, but I'm going to go ahead and come in this way. Or I'm going to go ahead and capture Naboo. So having smaller fleets, not medium-sized fleets, I guess is a better word, because you still want to be strong enough to win, but you can only roll a maximum of 5 red and 5 black die. Essentially, red die are capital ship damage, and for the most part, black die are fighter / trooper damage. So this would be a damage against a black, like, hull type. This is a wild, so it could be either one, and then in combat, this allows you to draw another combat card, or allows you to play a combat card. So if I have a bunch of fighters, X-Wings going against that Star Destroyer, if I get just this symbol, I actually can't do any damage to them. But Y-Wings actually roll red dice, and if the X-Wing ever gets this critical, then it can do damage to it. The best Imperial strategy is to conquer, especially in the beginning, to conquer as many worlds as you can, because the more worlds that you land on, you'll start getting more and more units built, because you can build a lot of units and you can really get that war machine up. You're not going to find a rebel base, like, there's 30 planets here. You know, you're not going to be able to go one fleet here, then like you win the game. Like, I would have to be really dumb, or you have to be incredibly lucky. That, and I can move it if I sense that that's where you're heading. The health of units and their attack strength is listed on this card. This is its attack strength. So, and then the dice that it rolls. So TIE fighters roll 1 black, no reds, and they have 1 black health. All the other ships are red health, and they roll a combination of both red and black dice. Death Stars roll 4 red dice, and they have essentially infinite health unless I get the Death Star plans. And if any of my fighters survive the first wave of combat, then I get to roll 3 dice. And if I get a critical, which I didn't here, if I did get a critical, then the Death Star is destroyed. So you always want to keep your Death Star with a lot of TIE fighters, so that whatever fighters are there, you'll be able to wipe them out in the first round of combat. You want to have an overabundance of black die. Same thing with troopers. They're black health. AT-ATs and AT-STs are red health. And this is the number of units it can transport. Rebel fighters have hyperdrive, so they can move independently on their own, but TIE fighters and all ground troops need to be transported in vessels that can transport. The assault carriers can carry 4 health worth of units, so the AT-AT is worth 3, AT-STs are worth 2. Star Destroyers can move 6, Super Star Destroyers 8, and Death Stars 8. The Rebels have their little tiny transport ships and corvettes and monocommand cruisers. Monocommand cruisers and Star Destroyers are, actually these things are essentially comparable with each other. Same thing with the AT-STs and the air speeders. It's just that we don't have anything similar to a Super Star Destroyer. Every turn, for the first 4 turns, we'll get a choice of 2 new heroes, and then you choose one of them, and then the other one. We start out with 4 heroes. We'll end up choosing another 4 out of a total of 8 that are there. So you'll have half of the possible reinforcements. Do you have any questions?
So do you have to use a hero to move your fleets?
Yes, you do. So that's something that's important about leaving people in reserve and not sending them on missions, because those are the only way that your ships can move. So let's actually say you had 2 ships here, and you're saying Tarkin is going to go to Toldanra. He can actually pull units from any adjacent system to go into the system. But once they're here, or if you did a mission on this planet, Vader couldn't then say, you know what, I actually want to send them there. Because otherwise you would just leapfrog and be able to go across the galaxy within a turn. The Death Star can blow up planets. You just have to draw one of these project cards and you'll get a super laser. You go on the planet, it's a mission, and it's just a resolve. It just happens, and whatever system you're in, when you play it, it blows it up. It doesn't matter what ground forces are there or anything like that, and the planet's destroyed. If it happened to be the rebel base, then you won the game. Congratulations. If you were wrong and you destroyed an innocent planet, I can play a card that allows me, if I have it, which I may not, depending on when you blow it up, I get 1 victory point for every planet you've destroyed, and you can destroy up to 3 planets, and you can have up to 2 Death Stars at the same time. If you can keep your first one alive, you can start building a second one. A Death Star under construction only has a health of 4 that can be damaged by fighters, and it gets built on a isolated, any unpopulated system. So as long as you keep it safe, or you don't allow my fleet to get near it, after 3 turns you have another Death Star on your hand, and I'm extra out of luck. But if I destroy both of them, I actually get 4 victory points, because but they're relatively tough to destroy, and if you're smart, you'll keep a fleet around them. So missions are kind of very, like for example, interrogation. Attempt against a captured leader. If successful, the rebel player must reveal the hand of their objective card, so that way you can find out if I had the Death Star plans or not. Mm-hmm. If I don't, you're like, alright, I don't even need to defend against it. Display of power. Attempt any populated system. If successful, gain 2 loyalty in the system. So that means you could turn a planet that is loyal to me instantly to a planet that's loyal to you. And so there's plenty of missions. For the most part, movement is only 2 adjacent systems. there's a handful. There's one card that allows you to take ground troops from one planet directly to one other one, which is good. If I moved a rebel base and you think you know where I moved it to, you're like, alright, now I'm going to go directly to that planet. And I have another one that allows me to do a raid with some ground troops, or, like, I can occasionally have troops just show up on a planet that you don't expect. But for the most part, without missions, it's only one planet at a time. We each get a recurring 4 missions that we keep on getting back, which for the Empire, we both have a political one that we can do turn after turn, and you have a capture one. But you can only have one captured rebel leader at a time, but you can have one captured, one frozen in carbonite, and one turned to the dark side. So you could actually have me down 3 leaders, and you would actually get an extra one, which would be like Warren actually turned turned Leia to the dark side on like turn 2, and for the rest of the game he had a 2 swing advantage essentially. Damn Leia, traitor. I eventually won, but that made it a lot tougher. But that's the gist of it.
So how do you build stuff?
Every other turn, we examine our queue, and we start putting things on the build queue. And some things take 3 turns to build. Some things are just 1 and 2. For example, Corellia. This is the capital ship planet, so you could build a fighter and a capital ship, but it takes 3 turns. So you put it in turn 3. While Kashyyyk can make 2 infantry units, and it takes 1 turn. So you would put that there. So that's every other turn, but every turn it does move down 1, and once it's at 1 and it goes down, then you deploy it. But you can only deploy it in a planet type that you have. But you can actually, it doesn't have to be the planet that initially build it, because that would be hard to keep track of. But say you started building on Corella, but then you capture Utapau, that can also build a capital ship. So even if it was initiated here, you could actually go ahead and deploy it there. But you can't deploy if there is an enemy unit anywhere in the system, like if it's blockaded essentially, or if it's actually being controlled with ground troops.
So you said that the units can only move 1 space at a time based on where the hero is, but the hero can jump around wherever they want.
Yeah, so hero can say, it will say where to do it. So, for example, this display of power, it says attempt in any populated system. So that's any system that has like that symbol on it. These are I forget if they call them this either unpopulated or like desert. Like I forget the term that they use, but essentially it's populated system and unpopulated system. And so it'll tell you where to do it. Like sometimes it says resolve in an Imperial system, resolve in attempt in any system that contains a Death Star, a Star Destroyer, or a Super Star Destroyer. So there'll be conditions, but yeah, the leaders they're essentially like in your pool, and then they hyperspace to like whatever mission, and they can pull local units to their location.
So they have to be on a mission. You can't just say, I want to go there.
No, actually, yeah, so the ones that you don't have on the mission, those are the ones that you can actually say, if they do a mission, that is actually their action at that system. And so let's say you have Vader do an action, and then you say the Emperor moves troops into it. That's fine. You just can't have the Emperor move troops to this system, and then Vader then move those same units to another system. Like, units can never leave a system that already has a leader there. But you can do multiple missions in the same system, but you just can't move from there. And for the most part, yeah, to move troops, you essentially have to hold them in reserve. So what happens is the leaders, so the rebels go first always, and I say I'm going to do 3 missions, and I'm going to leave 1 leader in reserve. Then you decide how many missions you're going to do, how many you're going to leave in reserve, and then I do 1 mission. You decide to counter it or just let it happen, and then you do a mission. I decide to counter it or just let it happen. And if you ever pass, you can't do any more missions. But let's say I have two missions left, and you only have 1 guy in reserve. Or you have 1 mission left and 1 guy in reserve, and you're like, I'm going to pass, and so that mission just goes back in your hand, and then he becomes like another reserve one essentially. But you can't do any more missions after you've passed.
So you can assign somebody to a mission and then take them off?
Yeah. You never have to do the mission, because sometimes conditions change. You know, like you were like, I was going to build a superstar destroyer in Corella, but the rebels did a sneak attack and took over the system or whatever. So you can't change what mission they're on, but you can essentially pass on it. So whenever there's a combat, you either choose one of your leaders that happen to be in that system, or you can fly in. So let's say there are units on Malastare, and then Riken comes in with a bunch of Montgomery cruisers, and then we'll go into combat. And then if Vader was in reserve, you could say Vader was actually there in that system, and he's going to lead the forces. And the blue symbol means the number of space combat cards that you draw, and the orange is the number of ground combat cards you would draw. And so, for example, even though Boba Fett has 3 3 spec op missions, and so does Vader, he's not a general. Like, he doesn't lead troops, but Vader does. He actually draws combat cards. So it would make more sense to hold him in reserve rather than hold Boba Fett in reserve. It's better to send him on a mission where he can be fully utilized. And it makes sense. Like, this game is very cinematic. Like, there'll be a lot of things that either did happen in the movies or could have happened in the movies that you're going to see. Boba Fett's going to capture one of my guys eventually, and then Vader's going to torture him for information. Like, that's how it's going to go down. And that was still 22 minutes. But I think that's a pretty good gist of it, actually.
Okay.
Nick, can you assemble one of the lights? I think that would help out.
It is a bit dark.
It's a battle of glare versus being able to see it accurately.
So at the end of the turn, do you get your heroes back?
Yeah. Unless you captured one of mine. I can't capture your leaders, but Luke can kill the Emperor or Vader if I have that objective card and I win a battle in a system where they're both at. So that's the only way I can take away any of your leaders, but you can capture, freeze, and turn to the dark side my leaders left and right. Which, especially since capture leader is one of your recurring cards, so that's a constant threat that you can always do to me. You may want to read up on those, on the type of things that you can do. So I actually have a growler of like a summer ale, and then I actually have a growler of cider. Do you have a preference?
I'll try the summer.
Okay. Back from California, or are you about to go?
I have have not gone to California yet this year.